Welcome back, everyone. I wanted to do a second video on the Walther P.38. This one, of course, is a different variation of that P.38. If you'll go back and watch my original video, you can see this pistol, which is a Walther produced P.38 from 1944. You can see the AC 44. And I explained all that in the original video. There were 3 manufacturers of these. But I wanted to concentrate on this video in the later variation of the gun. Now I need to give a little bit of history, so hang in there. We'll look at that gun in a minute. The original P.38, the steel framed P.38, ceased production at the end of World War II. And of course, the Wehrmacht gun began in 1938, ended in 1945 with the end of World War II. However, the Bundeswehr, the German military now, or presently, and at the post-war, was reforming and needed a sidearm, and they started reproducing. These are all Walther reproduced guns. In 1957, they came out with the P.38 once again, and they continued on until 1963 with that designation, the P.38 designation. The P.8 eventually came along and replaced the P.38, but that didn't begin until 1944, and in between there, late 1963, the P1 was introduced. A lot of people will argue that the P38 and the P1 post-war guns are actually all P1s due to the difference in that this has a light aluminum frame in it. And that light frame amounts to quite a bit of weight. If you hold the 2 guns in your hands, if you have an opportunity to do that, the difference is quite remarkable in their weight, even though it's only about 3 ounces, 1 pound 14 ounces on this gun. Quite hefty for a 9mm firearm, and this one about 1 pound 11 ounces. So a little bit of weight difference in there. You can also see some other differences. The main reason I wanted to bring this gun forward, since I already had a P38 video, is from a collector standpoint. Of course, these are supreme. They're starting to reach the price of Lugers in that $1,000 up range. They sometimes can be found under $1,000, but just under. About Luger P08s are in that same price range now. A very iconic German firearm, generally running about $1,000 to $1,300 for the short barrel version, and of course you can double that for the artillery versions. But if you like German firearms and are not necessarily budgeted for a high-end wartime gun, you can seek out one of these post-war firearms, and still virtually identical in appearance. However, there are a lot of differences, and there were a lot of variations along the way too. The operation is the same. Some of the variations were improvements upon this gun. This gun in particular was made in 1960, January of 1960. So it's about a mid-range gun. You can see it is import marked, and see if we can get the camera to pick up the date, January 1960. We can see the various acceptance stamps, military, and the Walther acceptance stamps. Some other stamps indicating some improvements that were done. I believe this one is the star, and that means that this has an upgraded firing pin in it. This may be a remanufactured gun. However, it is all numbers matching gun. May have been factory redone. It's in spectacular condition. Now you can see we have a phosphate coating on the barrel and the slide. rather than the bluing that's on the early gun. You see the bluing. You can also see the finish is a little better done than this late wartime gun. See some milling marks. Also, the grips are obviously different. These being Bakelite, these being just a plastic grip. But the main difference again is in the aluminum frame. Now these do have a reputation of cracking, and that is a fact. They will do it. Have a lot of heavy use and some heavy ammo such as plus P ammo. You definitely do not want to use that in any variation of a P38. There were lots of changes done to this gun as it went along, such as right about here there would have been a cross pin made out of steel added in order to reinforce the gun to help prevent that cracking and the frame stretching. The slide was also reinforced in one point, a beefier slide. This one does not have that. This is a very basic post-war firearm. These can be had in the $500 range and less. And as I say, this one is virtually identical to that one in many respects. You might want to seek out, I'll show you the sight picture. It's got the exact same sight picture. Later on, the sights were improved. The front blade was widened. White dots were added, both front and rear. At one point, the hammers were reinforced, firing pins were reinforced, even the slide stop was reinforced, or the takedown. And this has actually none of those except for this indication that possibly the fire pin was upgraded to a better firing pin, indicating it might have been rebuilt. That circled out is the Walther military acceptance mark. If it didn't have the dot in the center of the circle, it would be just their normal acceptance mark, from what I understand. Quick view of the other side. This gun also has a period magazine. I've had this magazine. I think I featured it in another video. As I said, these magazines are fantastic for collectors also, because there's so many variations on them. You can see this one is 5 of 60. Has the Walther banner. A wartime produced one would not have the Walther banner on it. Also still marked P38 rather than P1. Some people will argue that they're all P1s, but they have an aluminum frame, but there is a definite timeline that they switched from marking the slides from P38 to P1. Later barrels were changed. They were actually a liner barrel, and the method of lining them changed. There were many improvements and variations to this gun until they were finally began to be phased out by the P8 in 1994. Also, the holsters too. If you want to buy accessories, here's a period holster for that same firearm. Actually, this is a 1960 holster. You can see right there, 1965, same date that's on the magazine, in fact. Now these holsters are very inexpensive to buy. You can buy them on various sites. An original World War II rather holster for a P38 is going to cost you, depending on condition, again, you know, $100 to $200, where these can be found very inexpensively, you know, $30 maybe, if you're unlucky. And we can see another 1962 dated magazine there, again with the Walther banner, virtually identical to the other ones except the exception for the date and that is about it on that. Okay, so I wanted to show you that option in P38 so you don't have to spend a lot of money on these. And if you're careful with it, you can fire them just fine. Just don't use hot ammo in them. And they're very fun to study. You can study these late ones. The variants on them are just as interesting as the wartime versions. You can see the site number on it. So there we have it, a post-war P38 and some of the small differences from a wartime P38. And make sure you go back and watch my original video. I wanted to point out before I go real quick, one way to tell a reinforced slide is these serrations on the back of the slide will actually extend clear past the safety notch, clear about to this point on a reinforced slide. So that's one way you can tell the reinforced slide. The reinforced frame, of course, is by the cross pin right here. And both are very desirable to have if you're going to shoot the gun heavily without battering it and breaking it. But irregardless, there we go. Once again, as always, thanks for watching.